I'm making this video in response to the current voting between turn-based and real-time with pause combat system, which is being voted on in the Numenera private backer forum. My comments are being deleted because I do not agree with some of the people's opinions there. Apparently the administrators do not like it when I make observations and deductions that involve telling people they're stupid when they've told me they're stupid. I'm a fan of both combat systems because I love games from both, and I like having community involvement in game projects. I think that's smart. But this is going too far. Now maybe this is just because the Wasteland 2 team has a turn-based system and they got some influence, I don't really know. But this is not how you design a game and not how you do a spiritual successor to one of the greatest games ever, Planescape Torment. A spiritual successor to a game means having the same game themes, styles, or elements. It may also involve the same people who worked on the previous game. I stress the word game. While most simply would have wanted a direct sequel to Planescape Torment due to licensing issues, we'll be happy with what we get. We will not, however, deal with changing something that's expected, which is the gameplay. Game themes aren't just literary themes, they're related gameplay functions and their corresponding systems. A theme, to me, is what a game or story is about. Thus, a game or story can have multiple themes because it's about multiple ideas or features. The major theme is simply what the game or story is mostly about. Thus, the spiritual successor to a game is its gameplay. The spiritual successor to Gran Turismo is a driving simulator. To StarCraft, I expect a RTS. To League of Legends, I expect a MOBA. To Planescape Torment, I expect a D&D-based Infinity Engine-style game with the real-time with pause combat engine. This is why the current release of XCOM Enemy Unknown in 2012 was beloved, while the release of the Bureau XCOM Declassified wasn't. People wanted the old-school game of the original XCOM and not necessarily a real-time TPS version. Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 were spiritual successors to Planescape Torment. They had a real-time with pause combat system and some of the best storytelling in games. Project Eternity is the spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment. It's having real-time with pause, and by the staff working on it, I can be certain it's going to have an excellent storytelling. But the team with Numenera gave their backers a vote. Congratulations, Torment Tides of Numenera team. Via democracy, you're putting your designs in the hands of children. With a different combat system, the metaphysics are ruined. Exploration, that is moving your character about a level and clicking on things through an isometric perspective, is the base. This all occurs in real time. But on top of this, in Numenera, will probably lie an antiquated method of combat called turn-based. This is what Fallout 1 and 2 did, probably due to technology constraints. But suddenly now, the rules of nature are suspended. All characters are now dumb terminals, automatons waiting for the great computer game turn-based flavor of the lazy developer to determine when it can move or act or do something. Or maybe the game universe will tell the two opposing forces to be all gentlemanly and wait their entire phase for them to conduct their ridiculously energy-based movement behavior activities like the two generals are playing a game of chess with their men. While you can normally walk and conduct behavior like any normal person in exploration mode in real time, suddenly your character's bodily movements can only move about with a certain amount of stamina or movement units or whatever nonsense variable for action points are. So imagine two duelists or jousters ready their horses and they get in position in real time. But as soon as they start coming at each other, it becomes a TRPG. The first jouster moves only as far as he can because the system says he ran out of movement points, or the magical grid system appears before his eyes and he has to stop. The second jouster now doesn't have to go as far as the first since the first one closed that distance for them, and voila. The second jouster knocks off the first even though the first jouster was technically faster. Congratulations, you've just broken the concept of a joust and bastardized reality in the process. Now, sometimes having two systems with metaphysics can make sense. You can, for example, have another metaphysical reality instead of sitting on top of, but outside of that defined reality. For example, in the Persona series, specifically 3 and 4, there is the Dark Hour or Midnight Channel, where for 1 hour the evil bad guys come out and everyone's mysteriously hidden in coffins of some sort. I think in Persona 4 you actually enter a subconscious TV-like dimension by stepping through a TV. You can play with the rules of these two fantastical worlds just fine, and because Persona 4 is an actual sequel, this sort of makes sense. This can all be explained with the narrative. However, it still suffers from the problem of using a real-time exploration system in the supernatural world, which still breaks metaphysics. Even though it fails, at least the narrative is trying to explain this other interactive reality. This isn't Fallout or Fallout 2 or Fallout Tactics or Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre or Planescape Torment Tactics or Disgaea, or it's just not chess or Wasteland 2. I didn't put my money into Wasteland 2 because I just don't want to play that game. Seems Wasteland is getting an actual sequel, which originally was a turn-based combat system, and now it's using something similar to Fallout's. Okay, great. Good for them. More power to them. An upgraded version of its 1987 design. I wish them well. Wasteland was turn-based. Wasteland 2 is an upgraded version of turn-based. Okay. But Tales of Numenera is the spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. I want to play Planescape Torment's sequel. It's spiritual successor, whatever. But it's real-time combat, not turn-based. I expect the game to play the same as that. That's what the spiritual successor to a game is. It's gameplay. You do not leave these questions of game design up to a vote to people who are not game designers. Now let's just imagine if Planescape Torment was turn-based. Imagine how the high-energy curse battle music would fit. Well, it kind of wouldn't. Mark Morgan would have to compose things differently. The tone would change. Or imagine how engaging the idle animations of your character standing like a doll are in some combat stance would be like, while they get bulldozed by the entire team just because they had initiative or the enemy phase was first. Or you failed a dialogue check or some nonsense. Yeah, that'll be real fair. Chess, even if you play as black, is an even playing field. Turn-based in computer games, which works on top of an isometric real-time exploration mode, isn't just unbelievable, it's like the comical boxing match in Fallout 2. It's simply not fair. Numenera is a tabletop game and apparently has a very simple series of rules and things to follow to play. And if more complex D&D rules can be translated into Baldur's Gate and various other Infinity Engine games back in the day, the simpler rule set of Numenera can be done even easier. By nature of tabletop games, all gameplay in those are turn-based. Yet the more complex D&D rule set was working just fine in all the Infinity Engine games, which were D&D, over 10 years ago. And we simply can't do that today? This is my more favorite, if not more important point, is that the real-time with pause can be played to the level of strategy and tactics however you want. This was seen recently in Dragon Age and all the other real-time Infinity Engine games. You can be more tactical and strategic than in turn-based, simply by being able to cancel orders while they're being conducted. In turn-based, your series of options you choose will always be conducted. Between the two systems, the actual tactics or options you have are pretty much the same. In Dragon Quest JRPG series, if your programmed turns are set to attack one or two enemies, and your party of two defeats the first enemy, well, your second character will just naturally attack the second one with what you programmed for the first. This sounds like effective AI, unless of course you ordered your second character to attack the first ice enemy with a fire spell of some sort, and now it's attacking the second enemy with a fire spell, but that enemy is a fire creature and you just might end up healing it, however that system works. Or better yet, your second character casts a spell of fire on nothing because it's too stupid when its target is lost. Turn-based games turn your characters into dolls. At worst, it breaks the concept that they're characters and turns them into variables in a program. This is not what you want for a game whose highlight is storytelling. This brings us to our seventh point. There are so many versions of turn-based gaming, you don't know what you're going to get. Whereas in real time, you appease everyone and don't piss off anyone who doesn't like a certain kind. You can be as tactical, strategic, or action-oriented as you like. With turn-based, there's possibly enemy and player phases, there's tactical role-playing games, there's pure turn-based games with no strategy or level design whatsoever, and only with tactics like in Persona or Dragon Quest, and there might be an action point system from games like Fallout and Fallout 2. People voting for turn-based don't know what they're going to get, but for some reason can't simply deal with pausing the game and doing exactly what they would do if it was a turn-based game. With real-time with pause, you control the flow. You can be as fast or as slow as you like. You You can be as granular or as hands-free as you like. And voting on this shouldn't even be an option. Take this and put a 2 on the end. Write any new story you like, we know it's going to be good. But don't ask us for our opinions on changing something that already works, when most of the gamers don't know a damn thing about game design, let alone building a game engine. But we do know what we don't want. We don't want a Dragon Quest or a Pokemon or any Japanese role-playing game. We don't want a tactical role-playing game. Torment was never a TRPG. If we wanted one, we'd have put money into Wasteland. In this project, we don't want that. We want a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. Just take the systems from there and improve them. That's all you have to do. Now, this last point is more of an exercise. Just look at the list of spiritual successors on TV tropes and tell me where there are huge differences in the combat systems between the original and the successor. Is there one out there that did a different combat system? I mean, there must be. I just don't know, and I'm kind of curious just how well received those kinds of games were. I know there were a lot of problems with the XCOM series for its large changes over the years. Had I known the Numenera team were going to do this, I would not have put any money into this. With Project Eternity, I don't need to go to their forums and give my opinions. They're geniuses. They're going to make gold. They're in control. I want them to be in control. I don't want them to have my or anyone else's input on what game system to use. I threw as much money as I reasonably could at that project. But Numenera, I was a bit hesitant. Sure, Colin, smart guy, gave a great intro video. I was intrigued. It wasn't anything spectacular, but hey, I love Planescape. Why not? But still, something didn't quite sit with me. I don't know what it was. And for that reason, I didn't give as much money as I did to Project Eternity. You can only go so far with a name and an interesting premise. But, a gameplay demo might have helped. And with the Numenera team now, I don't have much faith in them anymore. I don't know what they're doing, but if they want to resort to a democratic vote, which is essentially mob rule or the loudest voice, not the most intelligent one, to tell them that this core gameplay engine should be, yeah, there's a bit of a problem with how they're doing things. And no offense to the Numenera team, I know they're nice, smart guys, and they're probably going to make a memorable, well-told game with interesting characters and plots, but I probably don't want to play it. Luckily, there will be the option to out-talk one's way out of hopefully almost every combat scenario, and thankfully because, well, it's simply not a spiritual successor to Planescape, and I don't like that. So the moral of the story is never give any money to a Kickstarter video game project until you see a demo first.